Monster Dossiers by Daniel Dawes. Over the length of the project, I was aiming to provide 3 unique creature designs and breakdowns that would be presented in a dossier or journal-like format, each containing silhouettes, anatomy, and profiles that would all aid a 3D artist within the industry to create an accurate design from my portrayal, which would also include a narrative throughout to showcase my design choices in a better light, whilst providing flair to an additional minimalistic tutorial-like process that would be showcased throughout. This was the plan that I used for each design. I would first start out with sketches to get initial ideas down following my mood boards that I would create for each monster, and then take the ones that I liked into silhouettes to see how diverse and unique they would look from each other, and then tweak them accordingly to make them more so. The ones that worked, I would take into grayscale and apply textures over the top, before then testing colour variations on them and delivering a final render from that. Then when I had that final render, I would take it, put it to the side, and base its anatomal structures over the top, be it its muscles or its skeletal structure, and provide those in the form of profiles, before compiling it all together into a dossier-like format and repeating the process for the other designs. As you can see, this is the first animation that I did for it. The intent behind this animation was to make the writing feel more alive, as if it's just being written in front of you, and as if all of the artwork was being scrawled onto the pages, as if somebody's just sketching it in front of you into this dossier. Here is the still that I provided as well. As you can see, I also included game elements within it, from the 3 symbols on the right to the water symbol above and to the wyvern classification, because this was all based from the game Monster Hunter. And these additional bonuses would help just further imply in-game effects that will be present within my work. Here is the second one. It's still. The third. And it's still. To move on to my exploration of research, I'll quickly go through the main inspirations that I had for it and then quickly showcase each one. So, in the Oceania's Ecology series, I used this as it provided an in-character narrative portraying the elements of the world through his eyes, giving a more grounded feel to it, whereas the Unnatural History channel, Wyvern Ecology and Creature Design series, would hyper-analyze the creatures chosen and break them down into real-life counterparts and the adaptations that real creatures have, showcasing just how in-depth the designs for the monsters in Monster Hunter really are. Beyond that is the main source of my inspiration, the Monster Hunter art and ecology books. I believe they provided an insane level of detail towards concept art, as each one was stupidly in-depth, and I wanted to try and create a process that would enable me to achieve a similar result. And I wanted to compile these into an ARC dossier-like format, as within the game they would provide additional information towards elements that people wouldn't think about during the actual gameplay for each one of the dinosaurs in a narrative note, which I would then try to compile to include my breakdowns. Fiorin 1994 Monster and Creature Design 101 was the overarching plan that I attempted to follow and mimic, adding my own extra steps, going from compiling it into a dossier to just the anatomy as a whole. And then I also featured my personal trials that I attempted to do this before we actually started the project. So moving on. Here were 2 of the examples. The one on the right showcased a sort of food chain-like breakdown from an in-character perspective, whereas the one on the left highlighted in Odogaron and compared it to different Hyenidae or lions, featuring different bone structures that mimicked real life, or even just going as deep as their hunting types, relating it more to a honey badger or scavenger, which I wanted to try and include going through my own work, where you see hunter type, my dossiers. Here are the 2 Monster Hunter art books that I chose to provide. As you can see, they go over the anatomy, headshots highlighting key important information, profiles showing the correct scale, colour variations depicting the actual colours that they have, final renders just showcasing the overarching aim that they wanted it to achieve, and highlights again, just verifying very key things that might change depending on what different stimuli the creature has. Here are the 2 ARC dossiers I've chose to provide. As you can see, it's a bit more narrative, a bit more stylized, which I want to try and attempt to mimic as well. But they do provide the same level of research, another breakdown, a bit of anatomy. But this is where the in-game items idea came from, as you can see within them. And here's just another example of the Fiore 1994, which was the overarching plan that I tried to mimic again. Here are my original works. As you can see, compared to the finished result, while they aren't bad, they are a lot more minimalistic. So I'm quite happy with the different comparison from the start to the end. But it was make silhouettes, make grayscale, apply different textures over the top, and then create profiles from them. But within my actual design, I chose to make these profiles the muscle structure and the skeletal structure. Moving on to an exploration of development. Initially going in, I would create mood boards for each different creature to get a vague sense of ideas for them, and also compile different forms of anatomy for each one that I would then be able to use to apply my own concepts from, based on that evidence. Taking these, I would then expand them into a specification list, as you see here, where I would get a general name for it. I would relate it to its wyvern class, a hunting type based on real life animals, and a habitat that I'd want it to be included within. And then, as you can see, the rest of the breakdown is just other narrative ideas or design ideas that I want to portray within them, or other just narrative elements that I wanted to write about when it came to that note-taking portion. And I got this idea from the Unnatural History channel. Moving on. So moving on to the development, where I started actually creating things. I'd initially start from these sort of trial sketches, but a few wouldn't work as well as the others. But this was the first real draft stage that I'd have to really create my work. And as you can see on the left, the two images provided were the first sort of drafts, and on the ones on the right were where they actually ended up in the final result. So you can see my work evolving throughout. Then I would take the ones that did work into silhouettes, just to check their overall feasibility and uniqueness from each other, or if I wasn't so sold on it, I could then have a play around with its proportions, maybe add different accessories onto this sort of grayscale or silhouette to make it a bit more unique looking, or try to test different ideas that I didn't within the sketches as a whole. But the aim was to create a unique silhouette that would be differential from other ones. Moving on to the grayscales. Again, you can see how my work changed over time, with the Kelpie getting greater in detail, as I would first start with just a mock sort of design. As you can see for the Kelpie, I went for a muscle structure at first that I would then blend into itself, but the legs weren't quite right, so I would redo that using a 3D source. But then the scales didn't work so right, so I tried to merge them together by using the different aspects and adaptations it would have for an underwater creature. As you can see with the deer, I would attempt different textures going over the top, just to provide different avenues that I could take the creature. Maybe I wanted it more stylized one way, maybe I just wanted it to have like a sort of fur look, which I chose in the end. Or as you can see within the dragon, I wanted to try and make a metallic sort of vibe. And for each one of these, I would attempt to use a different airbrush to really push myself, the Kelpie being an airbrush, the deer being a watercolour, and the final design being made from chalk, which I would then test different tools like distortion to get the scales flowing the correct way, warp tools to shape the wings or the horns a bit better, and then the smudge tool to try and blend all those elements together. Taking these, I would then develop a different colour for each, which was made quite easy after I'd got the grayscales to a advanced level. This is just a stage where I'll draft out different variations of colour to see what stuck, which colours best reflected the overall design, or which ones peers or other people that I would showcase them to really call out to them. But as you can see, this stage wasn't anything special. It was just baseline ideas before taking them and designing a final render from them. Onto the anatomy, I would use the profiles to provide greater reflections into elements and help portray the limitations to 3D artists when it came to rigging them for how the creature would accurately be able to move within a game space. I tried to portray this through its skeletal structure. As you can see for the Kelpie, it's a merge of a horse and fish bones, reflecting its underwater nature and maybe the weaker element of its tail when it came to damaged areas. Whereas the deer is a bit more of a standard deer, with a couple of more fancy elements based in there, and the dragon as a whole being a very unique creature, needing to really reflect its capabilities or my intentions for its design, going onto avian sort of wing, whereas a more dragon-like anatomy. And here are the final renders. I would attach, more so than the colour variations, a bit of extra detail, like the scratch work on the metal, the more natural patterns on the deer, or a bit more of an artistic flair on the kelpie. And then again, the final product. I can't really show too much of this video because I'm running out of time, but each one of my showcases are uploaded to a YouTube channel so other people could view it at a later date and follow along. So overall, as summary, I'm very glad I was able to provide the full scope that I'd set out to do. Maybe it would have been better if I included a voiceover or music over the top, which might be an element of future study. I'm very happy that I was able to use each unique and new tool that I attempted to set out to a great degree. However, I do believe that my anatomy could have been enhanced, so I've grabbed a book called Practical Anatomy by E.G. Lertz to get a greater feel of why muscles are shaped the way they are, and why skeletal structures are as dense as they are, for example. I'm very happy that I was able to provide semi-tutorial elements within my work, but I do believe they're a bit minimalistic and could do with being enhanced in future. I'm very happy that my narrative suited the world that I was basing it within for the Monster Hunter, but I do believe that my dossiers are a bit too separate from each other and would have standard to do better if they were interconnected. I'm very happy that the routine I set out was quite easy to follow, as it made my time management issues and my scheduling with work a lot easier to be able to manage this workload within. But I do believe that I need better time management overall, as it was really dragging my project down in the end. I'm happy I was able to provide different things like strong silhouettes to greater final designs than I did previously before the work, like with my bat and worm design that I'm sure earlier. But I do believe that these illustrations could have been enhanced even further to provide more in-depth views for the 3D artists. Overall, I'm very happy that my dossier layout was able to portray my concept art in a greater light with a more artistical flair, just making them a bit more interesting to look at when it came to building up my portfolio. And as such, I'd want to continue this portfolio sort of style going forward. My future professional possibilities in this concept art, I'm very happy with how it turned out in the end, but I don't know if it's quite up to mark with industry standards yet. But I do like my portfolio idea, and I have learnt that concept art as a whole is really in depth, a lot more so than you would think at first glance. And again, very happy with the possibility of this portfolio going forward. I like creature design as a whole and would love to try and find an element within it that I would then be able to provide within a job space. And I especially like making these dossiers as they combine my love of research within them. And then all of my work can be found on my art station, like it said above each different image. Thank you.